So Patrick, for those who don't know, what is Powering Through?
Powering Through is a nationwide conversational panel series in which we bring together people from both the bleeding disorders community and from outside of it to talk about obstacles and challenges that they have faced in their lives and what they've done to overcome them.
I couldn't really play sports growing up, obviously. So music was a really safe thing for me to do, and it was a good outlet for me to channel all that extra energy I had that I couldn't really put into physical activities as much as I could have if I didn't have a bleeding disorder.
The MRI revealed a light bulb-shaped tumor in my leg, caged in my kneecap, so when I got a biopsy, it turned out that I was diagnosed with what's called synovial sarcoma, and it's a soft tissue cancer. At the time, I was the rarest case of this, so I was put on experimental chemotherapy trials.
Losing my dad was a defining factor in my life, not just because of all the obvious things, but I still, I absolutely believe this, and which is why I'm such a strong advocate for these seminars. Like, obstacles and adversity truly makes you a stronger person.
And it's a program that we at Believe run in partnership with National Cornerstone Healthcare Services.
That's right.
Now that partnership started before I was even at Believe. So how did that conversation start between you and NCHS?
A few years ago, I was attempting to become the first person with severe hemophilia to complete the New York City Marathon. And ultimately, for medical reasons, I had to stop that initiative. But it sparked a conversation between NCHS and Believe about inspired and inspiring people with bleeding disorders, and how do we create a community program about those people. And after a couple of weeks of back and forth, we settled on what's become Powering Through.
In 2015, we did 7 Powering Through events around the country. We did Southern California, Northern California, St. Louis, Omaha, Indianapolis, West Palm Beach, and Albany.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much. And so on that, what is something that struck you about the bleeding disorders community around the country?
Just how universal many of the topics and concerns are. There are newly diagnosed families who are asking questions about how much freedom to give their son as he grows up with severe hemophilia.
Sometimes you just need another mom's shoulder to just bounce off of and listen, just to continue to connect kind of throughout the year.
We would take him to specialist orthopedists everywhere. Nobody ever said, could he have a bleeding disorder?
I was under the impression that if I hugged my child, he would have bruises around his torso, he would die at 36, I had all these horrible things in my head.
Sometimes we forget that we have hemophilia because we're just so in our routine and everything has been going so great, but then sometimes we're pushed right back into it saying, whoa, slow down, you need to make sure that we're on track and doing what we're supposed to be doing to keep us on this path of no bleeds.
There are young professionals who have questions about attaining affordable health insurance as a person living with von Willebrand's disease.
It's been a bit of a challenge to get the same type of medication and the same type of care. Right now, I think all my meds are back in order.
One of the topics that's been really neat to see emerge so frequently is the growing awareness of women with bleeding disorders.
The perception was different even from the medical community, where it was only boys who had bleeding disorders. So yeah. I've been able to see that change.
Are there any particular guests or moments from specific panels that stick out to you?
Yeah, there's a lot of standout moments. Getting to have a really intimate conversation with Jeanie White, the mother of Ryan White, who had hemophilia and was an HIV/AIDS activist. It's a very powerful story.
And then we had an attorney call us, and it became just very ugly. Once we got that fight to go to school, we fought at first the school board, the principal, the teachers. They voted unanimously to keep Ryan out of school.
Having Joel Stein, writer for Time magazine, on our SoCal panel, and admittedly, he knew next to nothing about bleeding disorders, so we started a little bit of a Hemo 101 class for Joel.
You're the first person I've met with a bleeding disorder.
Well, I'm happy to have introduced you to the community.
Yeah. Am I a part of it now?
You are a part. I think so, right? All you gotta do is come to the events and you're in.
Wow.
Yeah. It's not a very high bar,
no,
so
I got the feeling, yeah.
Lacey Jai Henderson is a Paralympic record holder, and we had her at our HFA panel in St. Louis. And the questions the audience had for her and the level of interest they had and what her struggles have been was really, really inspiring.
Is the prosthetics painful?
No, you need it to have a good fit. You need to have a good suspension for sure, especially if you're going to do things as dynamic as running, as jumping. I've had an excellent prosthetist. That's what they're called. That was an interesting word to learn.
Quite a vocab day for
Yeah.
And just recently in West Palm Beach, when we were down in Florida, we had a young girl ask a question of Allie Cashel, who was our guest panelist with Lyme disease, about how she got to become such a strong advocate and what her motivations were.
I was told by some of the best doctors in the world, like, you're crazy. This is psychosomatic. Go home and get a therapist. And yet antibiotics and other treatments were helping me get better.
And you heard that multiple times?
Multiple times, yeah.
And through the course of the Q&A, it was revealed that this young girl had factor V deficiency and was kind of frustrated that she had never met anyone other than her sibling who also had factor V deficiency. And I was able to chime in and say, I actually know someone who's an activist with factor V deficiency, and I'd love to connect the two of you. And now she has started a little movement to raise awareness for people with factor V deficiency and try to bring that really rare community together. That's one of those moments where when the day ends, I go, that's why we do this.
And what have you personally found most rewarding about producing and hosting Powering Through?
We're very active at Believe digitally and nationally, but now being so involved in regional events really helps me feel, as a person with a bleeding disorder, that I have a better understanding in totality of who we are. One of the highlights for me is bringing in these, as we call them, our guest panelists, the folks from outside the bleeding disorders community, because inevitably there are interesting conversations that come up as they come to learn about our community, and we start to learn a little bit about where they're coming from and where their perspective and their take on challenges derives from.
Due to the location of the cyst on my brain, I'm supposed to lose all coordination. I'm supposed to be paralyzed by now, and here I am still running track and traveling around the world.
I'm sure you guys have come up against the idea of that, oh, you have hemophilia, so you can't really do that. Like, it's probably best you don't do that. You want to educate people so that we aren't ignorant as to, you know, what you guys can actually achieve, whether it's a half marathon or going swimming.
What are your goals for Powering Through moving into 2016?
We've done to date in total 10. And I'd like to do at least that, if not more, in 2016. We've done them as standalone events regionally. We've done them as part of chapters, annual meetings, or educational symposiums. And we've done them with HFA at their national symposium. I'd like to do more of all three of those. I'd like to do one at NHF as well. I'd like to look at territories that we have not gone to, and maybe those that have smaller populations that don't often get programming at this level. Every time we do one, the feedback is immediate that they are of value. So I would just like to continue offering that value to community all around the country.
And is there anything else that people need to know about Powering Through?
Yeah, they need to know that you can find all of the material from Powering Through at poweringthrough.org, because while it is a live panel series, we are a digital content agency. So every time we do one, we shoot on multiple cameras, we record with high-end audio. It is professionally edited and distributed and hosted at poweringthrough.org. If you haven't been to one or you're just curious to learn more, go to poweringthrough.org and you'll find everything you need.